Well, good morning. This is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred. I'm really glad you could join me today. Boy, it sure is a beautiful day here in Pennsylvania, Zone 6. And so today I just wanted to give you some tips and ideas on how to grow these BURPEE super snappy peas. So I'm really glad you could join me today. So before we get started, I just wanted to show you which bed that I'm going to be planting these in. It's actually more of the north side of my garden area here. You can see between those two metal stakes. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be growing these BURPEE snap peas. And you know, they give you a lot of nice helpful information behind the pack. They even give you a map there telling you when you should be planting these type of peas, and so yeah, you want to make sure too that the soil's nice and loose. I use the composted leaf mulch here, amended with topsoil. It's about a 50-50 mix. Like if you have an existing garden bed, you want to make sure the soil's nice and loose. You might need to add some peat moss or some type of growing medium just to loosen the soil, because you want the soil nice and loose so that the roots will spread nice and easy. You know, and I use this garden fork. You want to make sure that the soil's nice and loose as you work it through the soil. And so here behind the pack, they give you some information here on how to plant these seeds. We'll be direct sowing these in the garden. And you know, there's so much confusion out there. It really seems like it's frustrating or intimidating even trying to start to grow your own garden. But really, the techniques that I use here, it really keeps things simple. And you know, my hope is to give you some tips and ideas, you know, on all these garden plantings to make it a lot more simplified and really not that difficult to do. But you know, behind the pack it says sow in average soil in full sun in early spring for first crop, in late summer for fall crop, and sow seeds 2 inches apart. And what I'm going to be doing here is planting these in this 8-foot bed along the edge, coming in about 6 inches. So now that your soil's nice and loose, and what I did is I took my hoe here and I just hoed a 2-inch trench about 6 inches out from the edge of the wood frame, and then I just get my hands a little bit and clean the trench up a little bit. You want to make sure that there's no clumps of dirt or compost, because when you plant your seeds, you want to make sure that when you backfill it, your seeds get good contact with the soil, and that, you know, there's no air gaps in there or big clumps. And so once you dig the trench, and what I also did is I took these old tent stakes that I had. I used to do a lot of tenting in the past, and you know, they all come with fiberglass rods. Sometimes there's an elastic cord between them, and you know, I just cut the cord and pulled these out. But I have probably about 20-30 of these fiberglass rods, and you want to just make sure you mark the end of your rows. You know, you can use a rock or a branch, it doesn't matter, whatever works. Or you could even plant radishes seeds at the end of the rows, because they don't take long to come up, and that way they can also mark the ends of your rows. That's another good tip. But basically just you know, open the pack and pour the peas in your hand, and again you want to dig the trench about 2 inches deep, and I'm just going to plant these, simply lay them in the trench 2 inches apart. And we just love these sugar snap peas. They're nice and crunchy. I love coming out here in the garden and just eating them right off the vine here. That's one thing I love about gardening, is you can come out here and just eat everything nice and fresh right off the vine. And especially since we're, you know, we follow a plant-based lifestyle, and so you know, it's just really nice having an organic vegetable garden here, coming out and just eating things right off the vine. And so anyhow, I just laid them in the trench very simply, about 2 inches apart. And again, in a nice loose soil, so the roots will spread easily. See, the more the ability the root has to spread, the more it'll be able to take up the nutrients in the soil, resulting in a larger plant. And that's what we all want. We want a bang for our buck. And so simply, you could either take your hoe here and rake the soil in, or, you know, you could use the back end of your rake here and then just simply backfill the trench. Again, nothing real difficult. And I'll just level the soil off a little bit with my hand, even a little bit more. I don't grow a whole lot of snap peas. This is about a 7-foot row, 8-foot row, and you know, they'll certainly supply my wife and I and some friends plenty of snap peas. And then I just go along and I'll just tamp them in by my hand. You could use the back of your rake if you want. And then what I'm going to do next is also, I have 2 fence stakes here that I drove in the ground here that I'm going to support my fence wire here. And so this fencing's 4 feet high and 7 foot long, and so it really makes it easy to design a trellis for your peas to grow up. And what I'm also going to use is I have some 8-inch cable ties that I'm going to just attach this fencing to the posts using these cable ties. Probably put about 4 on each end, and it really just makes it nice and simple to attach this trellis. And so what I'm going to do after this then is lay down some row cover here on the soil. So what I'm going to do next is install this row cover here. Now let me say something, you know, again, you learn by trial and error. Before I installed that 4-foot by 7-foot metal fencing there, and by the way, you can get those at any home center, and so again, it makes a nice, quick, easy trellis. I should have installed the row cover before I put the fencing up, okay? But you know, it's one of those things, putting together these films, you don't always get all the ducks in a row. But so what I'm going to do is just simply, you know, this is spun bonded polyester. This piece is about 8 feet long and a foot or so wide, and so I'm going to lay this over the seeds. It keeps it'll keep the birds off and any dogs you might have, you know, keep them from digging up the seeds. And so I'm simply just going to lay this down here and put a brick on each side of it, like this. And so that's going to, and it'll also hold in the moisture. And then you also want to just make sure you water these in real good. And so water them in real good. It'll help settle that soil. You don't want the seeds to have good contact with the soil. And so looking forward to it in a couple of months, maybe a month and a half, having some nice snap peas here. We'll have them with our baby potatoes that I'm going to be planting all so those in another day or so. So anyhow, I hope these tips and ideas have been helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. And I just want to thank you for joining me today. So until next time, this is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred.